Admiral Vexthar's scales rippled with barely contained horror as he stared at the holographic display. The blue-green planet rotated slowly, deceptively beautiful from orbit. But every seasoned officer in the Galactic Defense Council knew what that color combination meant. "That's a Class 12 Deathworld," he hissed, his translator converting the sound into standard galactic common. "You sent a battalion to Earth?" Commander Ilera, the reptilian liaison from the Krell Dominion, shifted uncomfortably. Her third eye blinked rapidly, a sign of distress among her species. The initial scans were incomplete. "We thought it was a Class 6 at most." "A Class 6? Vexthar's voice rose an octave. Around the circular chamber, the other admirals leaned forward, their various appendages tensing. "How do you mistake a water-covered nightmare with 1.2 standard gravity for anything safe?" The hologram zoomed in, showing vast oceans churning with storms, continents covered in dense vegetation, and mountain ranges that scraped the edge of breathable atmosphere. Vexthar had seen recordings of Deathworlds before. They were the stuff of cadet training warnings, planets so hostile that even establishing a research station required military-grade environmental suits. "The dominant species called for help," Ilera explained, her voice barely above a whisper. "They said their world was pretty normal, and that they needed assistance with a mining dispute on their fourth moon. We sent soldiers as peacekeepers." "And?" Admiral Korth, a massive insectoid from the Hive Collective, clicked his mandibles impatiently. "They're all dead." The chamber fell silent except for the hum of the holographic projector. Vexthar felt his stomach drop, or rather, the organ that served a similar function in his species. "The humans killed them?" Korth asked. "No," Ilera said, and her voice carried something worse than fear. It carried confusion. "The planet killed them. All 47 soldiers. Within 6 standard hours of landing." She pulled up the casualty reports. The list scrolled across the display, each entry more baffling than the last: atmospheric allergic reaction, microbial infection, cardiac failure due to gravitational stress, consumed by local predator, estimated 60 kilograms, poisoned by local plant life. 60 kilograms? Vexthar repeated. What kind of predator weighs only 60 kilograms on a heavy-gravity world? According to the humans, Ilera said quietly, it was a medium-sized dog. They seemed confused about why it was a problem. The chamber erupted in shocked murmurs. Every admiral present had studied xenobiology. They knew that any predator evolved on a Class 12 Deathworld should be avoided at all costs. "Where are these humans now?" Vexthar demanded. "They're offering to host a diplomatic summit. To apologize for the misunderstanding." Vexthar stared at the planet. Somewhere down there, an entire species lived and thrived on what should be an uninhabitable hellscape. "By the stars," he breathed. "What are they?" Admiral Vexthar spent the next 3 hours in the archive chamber, pulling every file on humanity that existed in the galactic database. What he found didn't comfort him. The humans had introduced themselves 40 standard cycles ago with a cheerful broadcast message: "Hello. We're from Earth. We'd love to meet you." They'd included coordinates, cultural information, and an open invitation to visit. Every species that received the message had run standard analyses on the planet's specifications. When the results came back showing a Class 12 Deathworld, most governments quietly filed the message away, assuming it was either an elaborate trap or a joke from a more advanced species. But the data didn't lie. Vexthar pulled up Earth's environmental statistics and felt his scales bristle all over again. Gravity, 1.2 standard, enough to crush the bones of most spacefaring species over time. Atmospheric composition, 21% oxygen, a highly corrosive gas that most species could only tolerate in concentrations below 12%. Weather patterns, violent storms with wind speeds exceeding 400 km per hour, temperature variations of 100 degrees between seasons, and precipitation that ranged from frozen to boiling. The planet was tectonically active, prone to earthquakes and volcanic eruptions. It housed millions of species, most of them predatory or poisonous. The oceans contained creatures larger than most spacecraft. The land masses were infested with microscopic organisms that could kill an unprotected visitor within days. And humans called it home. Vexthar found a video file labeled Human Recreation Activities. Curiosity overwhelming his dread, he played it. The first clip showed humans throwing themselves from aircraft, falling thousands of meters before deploying fabric parachutes. They were laughing. The second showed humans climbing sheer rock faces using only their appendages, hundreds of meters above ground, without safety equipment. The third showed a human swimming in open water, surrounded by large predatory fish with razor-sharp teeth. The human was trying to touch them. This must be propaganda, Vexthar muttered. Fear tactics to keep others away from their world. But the metadata confirmed authenticity. These were real humans doing these activities voluntarily. For enjoyment. He found medical records next, sanitized data humanity had shared during initial diplomatic exchanges. The average human could survive blood loss that would kill most species. Their bodies fought off infections that had no known cure in galactic medicine. They could adapt to temperature extremes, survive on minimal water, and endure injuries that should be fatal. Most disturbing was a note in the cultural database. Humans have a concept called vacation, where they intentionally travel to dangerous locations for recreation. A communication alert interrupted his research. Ilara's face appeared on his personal display. Admiral, the humans have sent another message. They're apologetic about our soldiers. They've offered to cover funeral costs and have sent something called gift baskets as condolences. Gift baskets? Containers of food items native to Earth. Admiral, our xenobiologists are analyzing them now, and they're finding compounds that would be toxic to 17 different species in the Council. Vexthar closed his eyes. They sent us poison as an apology gift? No, Admiral. These are foods they eat regularly. They're considered treats. 3 days later, a human ship entered Council space. It was small by galactic standards, barely the size of a diplomatic shuttle, but it moved with unsettling efficiency. The hull was made of materials that registered as primitive on Council scanners, yet it had crossed 3 sectors without refueling. Admiral Vexthar watched from the station's observation deck as the vessel docked. Security forces, kept at a careful distance, monitored every movement. No one wanted another incident. The airlock opened, and the human ambassador stepped through. She was small, barely reaching Vexthar's mid-thorax, with skin the color of dark soil and hair bound in intricate patterns. She wore simple clothing and carried nothing except a data pad. But the way she moved made Vexthar's predator sense trigger. There was a controlled grace to her steps, a readiness that spoke of a lifetime navigating danger. Admiral Vexthar? She smiled, showing flat teeth, except for the slightly pointed canines that marked humans as opportunistic predators. I'm Ambassador Keisha Okoye. Thank you for agreeing to meet. Her accent was melodic, her tone warm. Vexthar had to remind himself that this creature had evolved on a planet that ate soldiers for breakfast. Ambassador, he replied carefully. We need to discuss the incident. Of course. Her expression shifted to something that might have been guilt. I can't apologize enough. We had no idea your people would be so vulnerable. When you said you were sending peacekeepers, we assumed they'd be equipped for Earth conditions. Equipped for, Vexthar stopped himself. Ambassador, your planet is classified as a Class 12 Deathworld. Nothing is equipped for those conditions except the species that evolved there. Keisha's face showed genuine confusion. Class 12? That's the highest classification, isn't it? For planets with active lava surfaces and toxic atmospheres? No, those are Class 15 worlds. Uninhabitable even with suits. Class 12 means barely survivable. The human was quiet for a moment. Then she laughed, actually laughed, a sound that was both musical and slightly unhinged to Vexthar's ears. You think Earth is barely survivable? Admiral, we have cities with millions of inhabitants. Children play outside. We have vacation resorts. Yes, Vexthar said flatly. We've seen your vacation footage. You jump from aircraft for entertainment. Well, sure, some people enjoy extreme sports, but, she paused. Admiral, how would you classify your own homeworld? Threxia is a Class 3. Stable climate, low gravity, minimal predation, moderate oxygen levels. Keisha nodded slowly. And you consider that normal? It's the average for spacefaring civilizations. Most Class 1 through 5 worlds produce species capable of space travel. Anything higher is considered hostile. The human ambassador sat down without being invited, a breach of protocol that Vexthar was too surprised to address. She looked genuinely troubled. Admiral, we didn't know. When we sent out our first contact message, we honestly thought we were normal. Maybe a bit adventurous, but normal. Ambassador, your people eat poison for enjoyment, live under crushing gravity, and survive injuries that would kill most galactic citizens. You are anything but normal. Admiral Vexthar insisted on proper protocols. If humanity wanted a place in the Galactic Council, they needed to understand the danger they posed. He arranged for a medical demonstration in one of the station's scientific bays. Ambassador Okoye agreed readily, too readily, in Vexthar's opinion. The bay was filled with representatives from different species, all maintaining careful distance from the human. Dr. Zentok, a renowned xenobiologist from the Quill Confederation, prepared his instruments with trembling appendages. Ambassador, Zentok began, his translator rendering his nervous chittering into common, we'd like to conduct some basic tests. Nothing invasive. Simply measurements to understand human physiology better. Of course, Keisha said cheerfully. She'd removed her outer jacket, revealing arms marked with small scars. Vexthar noted each one, evidence of her world's hostility. Zentok started with atmospheric requirements. He adjusted the chamber's oxygen levels downward. At 18%, most species began experiencing cognitive impairment. At 15%, Vexthar felt his own breathing grow labored. Keisha noticed. Are you all right, Admiral? You look pale, paler than before? I'm fine, he wheezed. Please continue. At 10% oxygen, Zentok stopped the test. Keisha had reported feeling a little short of breath, but showed no signs of distress. Her vital signs remained stable. Fascinating, Zentok muttered. Now, let's test atmospheric pressure. He increased pressure gradually. At 1.4 standard atmospheres, the other observers began feeling uncomfortable. At 1.8, Vexthar had to leave the chamber. At 2.1 atmospheres, pressure found only in the deepest habitable zones of ocean worlds, Keisha simply commented that it felt like being underwater. The temperature tests were equally disturbing. Keisha tolerated heat that would cook most species and cold that would freeze their circulatory fluids. Her comfortable range was absurdly broad. Then came the gravitational tests. Zentok couldn't adjust the station's actual gravity, so he used a resistance suit, a training tool that simulated higher gravity through weighted resistance. At 1.5 standard gravities, most species could barely move. At 2.0, bone fractures became common. Keisha put on the suit calibrated to 1.8 gravities and did 10 jumping jacks, a human exercise that involved leaping into the air while moving limbs in coordinated patterns. She wasn't even breathing hard. This feels like a good workout, she said. We have gyms that use equipment like this back home. Vexthar, watching from the observation room, felt his scales go cold. She's doing voluntary exercise at nearly twice standard gravity. That's not even the disturbing part, Zentok said, reviewing his data. According to these readings, her bone density is 3 times the galactic average. Her muscle fibers are twice as efficient. And her cardiovascular system. He trailed off, mandibles clicking in disbelief. What about it? It's designed to operate at peak efficiency under incredible stress. Admiral, humans don't just survive their planet. They're optimized for it. In the test chamber, Keisha had removed the resistance suit and was drinking water, earth water, from her personal supply. Zentok had analyzed it earlier. It contained minerals that were toxic to 4 different species present. One more test, Zentok announced. If you don't mind, Ambassador. He brought out a sealed container. Inside was a sample of Vexian spice, a plant from Vexthar's homeworld that produced a mild irritant used in cooking. Could you consume this? Zentok asked. Keisha examined it. What is it? A common food additive from Admiral Vexthar's planet. Mild irritant. Produces a pleasant tingling sensation for his species. She shrugged and took a small bite. Then her eyes widened. Oh. That's got some kick to it. You're experiencing pain? Zentok asked eagerly. No, it's just spicy. Reminds me of habanero peppers from home. She took another bite. Actually, this is pretty good. Vexthar watched as the human consumed what should have been an irritant, categorizing it as spicy, a term that humans apparently used for pain they enjoyed. What, he asked slowly, is a habanero pepper? Keisha smiled. A fruit we eat. Scores about 300,000 on the Scoville scale. And that scale measures how much pain the food causes. We have competitive eating contests with them. The observation room fell silent. Somewhere, a translator unit gave up and just produced a series of confused beeps. The emergency council session was called within hours. Representatives from 40 species crowded into the chamber, all demanding answers about the Deathworld species that had entered galactic space. Admiral Vexthar presented his findings with clinical precision, though his scales still rippled with residual shock. The holographic display showed Keisha's test results alongside average galactic baselines. Every metric was absurd. They're apex predators from a hostile world, declared Representative Crix, a crystalline being from a peaceful garden planet. We should quarantine their system immediately. They're not hostile, Vexthar countered, surprising himself. Just durable. Durable? Crix's surface flashed red with agitation. They consume toxins recreationally. They exercise under crushing gravity for enjoyment. Admiral, they're dangerous. Ambassador Okoye, attending the session via hologram to avoid causing panic, spoke up. If I may address the council? The chamber quieted. Vexthar gestured for her to continue. I understand your concerns, Keisha said. We didn't realize how different we were. But Earth isn't trying to threaten anyone. We just want to join the galactic community. Why? Asked Counselor Mira, a graceful amphibian whose species had been spacefaring for millennia. You clearly don't need our technology. Your people crossed 3 sectors in a primitive ship that should have required twice the fuel. Because we're efficient, Keisha explained. We had to be. Earth doesn't forgive waste. But that's exactly why we want to join. We have experience surviving difficult conditions. We can help. Help with what? Vexthar asked. Keisha's expression turned serious. Admiral, we've been monitoring galactic communications since we achieved space flight. We know about the frontier colonies failing. The mining operations on high-gravity worlds that keep getting abandoned. The exploration missions to harsh planets that never return. She pulled up her own holographic display, showing a map of galactic space with dozens of red markers. These are classified as uninhabitable in your databases. But by our standards, at least half of them are perfectly viable. Some are even nicer than Earth. The council chamber erupted in protest. Vexthar raised his manipulator arms for silence. "You're suggesting humans could colonize worlds we've deemed too hostile?" he asked. "Not just colonize. We could help build infrastructure, conduct research, establish mining operations. Admiral, there's a Class 11 world in the Rigel sector with massive deposits of heavy metals. Your databases say it's too dangerous because of the gravity and temperature extremes. We could have a mining operation there in 6 months." "Impossible," Crix declared. "The gravity alone is 1.4 standard," Keisha interrupted. "That's actually lighter than Earth. The temperature range is challenging, but nothing we haven't dealt with before. We have settlements in Earth deserts that reach 50 degrees Celsius and Arctic bases at -60. Vexthar checked his data. She was right. The Rigel world was classified as uninhabitable, but its conditions were actually less extreme than parts of Earth. "What do you want in return?" Counselor Mira asked suspiciously. "Technology sharing. Cultural exchange. Medicine, we've noticed your species have treatments for diseases we still struggle with. And honestly, friends. We've been alone in the universe for our entire history. We'd like to change that." The chamber fell silent. Vexthar looked at the data, then at Keisha's earnest expression on the hologram. "You understand this would be a trial period," he said slowly. "We'd need guarantees. Safety protocols. Extensive cultural training for both sides." Keisha's face split into a wide smile. "Of course. We're not asking for full membership immediately. Just a chance to prove we can coexist peacefully." "And the soldiers who died?" Crix demanded. "How do we ensure that doesn't happen again?" "Environmental briefings," Keisha said immediately. "We'll provide detailed information about Earth conditions. Any visitors would need proper equipment and medical screening. We'd establish a space station for initial meetings, neutral territory where everyone's comfortable." Vexthar looked around the chamber. Fear and uncertainty filled the room, but also something else, hope. The Galactic Council had been stagnating, unable to expand into harsher environments. Humanity might be the answer they needed. "I propose a vote," he announced. "Provisional contact status for humanity. Limited cooperation on one test project, the Rigel mining operation. If successful, we revisit full membership in 2 standard cycles." The vote was close. But it passed. 6 months later, Vexthar found himself on a transport ship heading to the Rigel system. He'd insisted on overseeing the human operation personally, partly from duty, partly from morbid curiosity. The mining world loomed ahead, a gray-brown planet with churning storm systems and jagged mountain ranges. Council databases listed it as extreme hostile environment. The previous survey team had lasted 4 hours before evacuating. The human mining ship, optimistically named New Frontier, sat in orbit nearby. It was larger than their diplomatic vessel but still primitive by galactic standards. No artificial gravity generators. No energy shields. Just thick metal hull and chemical thrusters. "Admiral Vexthar," a voice crackled over the comm, "this is Captain Rodriguez of the New Frontier. Welcome to Rigel, 7. Ready to see what we've accomplished?" "I'm docking now, Captain," Vexthar replied, trying to keep the trepidation from his voice. The airlock cycled. Vexthar stepped through wearing his environmental suit, rated for Class 8 worlds at maximum. He'd brought medical staff, emergency evacuation protocols, and enough worry to power a small station. Captain Rodriguez met him without a suit. Just standard work clothes and a breathing mask. "Welcome aboard, Admiral. Sorry about the mess, we've been running non-stop shifts. You're not wearing environmental protection, Vexthar observed. Oh, the ship's pressurized to Rigel, 7 surface conditions. Helps with acclimation. Saves time when we go down for surveys. Rodriguez noticed Vexthar's scales paling. Don't worry, we have a visitor section with standard atmosphere. Follow me. They walked through corridors filled with humans working on equipment. Everyone looked healthy, energetic even. Vexthar's suit sensors showed the ship's interior conditions: 1.4 gravities, elevated temperature, thin oxygen mix. The humans weren't just surviving. They were thriving. Rodriguez led him to an observation deck overlooking the planet. On the surface below, Vexthar could see structures, actual buildings, not just temporary shelters. That's Base Camp Alpha, Rodriguez explained proudly. 47 personnel. Processing facility, living quarters, and recreational area. We've extracted 400 tons of heavy metals in the past 3 months. Recreational area? Vexthar asked weakly. Humans need downtime, Admiral. We set up a basketball court. You're playing games on a Class 11 Deathworld. Well, yeah. Gotta stay active. The gravity's great for building muscle tone. Vexthar accessed the mission reports Rodriguez had been sending. Everything was ahead of schedule. Ahead of the most optimistic projections. The humans had not only established a base but were expanding it. How many casualties? He asked. Rodriguez looked confused. Casualties? We've had some minor injuries, broken bones, heat exhaustion, one allergic reaction to local dust. But nothing fatal. Why? Your people are working in conditions that killed trained soldiers. Admiral, those soldiers weren't prepared. We are. This is what we do. Rodriguez gestured to the planet below. Earth taught us to respect hostile environments. We don't conquer them, we adapt to them. Every human down there has trained for years. They know the risks and take them seriously. A communication alert interrupted them. On the screen, a human in a dusty work suit appeared, one of the surface crew. Captain, we found something interesting in Sector 7. Large cavern system, protected from surface storms. Could be perfect for expanding the base. Any dangers? Rodriguez asked. Local fauna, looks like silicon-based organisms. Big ones, maybe 3 meters long. But they seem docile. Jenkins is trying to make friends with one. Vexthar's translator must have malfunctioned because he could have sworn the surface worker said someone was attempting to befriend a giant alien creature on a Deathworld. Tell Jenkins to keep his distance until we can study them properly, Rodriguez said. We're guests on this world. The worker nodded and signed off. Rodriguez turned back to Vexthar. Sorry about that. Exploration teams can get a bit enthusiastic. Enthusiastic, Vexthar repeated numbly. Captain, do your people understand they're working on one of the most dangerous planets in this sector? Of course, Rodriguez said, looking genuinely puzzled by the question. That's why we volunteered. Admiral, back on Earth, we have people who willingly go into space. Real space, vacuum, radiation, all of it. We have people who dive to the bottom of oceans where the pressure would crush your ship. We climb mountains where the air's so thin you can barely breathe. This? He gestured to the planet. This is just Tuesday for us. Vexthar looked at the base below, at the humans going about their work in conditions that should be impossible. He thought about his own world, safe, comfortable, gentle Threxia where the greatest danger was an occasional mild storm. And he realized something that shook his understanding of the galaxy. Humanity wasn't a threat to the Galactic Council. They were its greatest asset. 1 standard year later, Admiral Vexthar stood in the council chamber presenting his final report on the Human Integration Project. The room was full, every species wanted to hear about the Deathworld experiment. The Rigel 7 operation has exceeded all projections, Vexthar announced. The holographic display showed the mining base, now expanded to house 200 humans. Mineral extraction is at 400% of original estimates. The base has become self-sufficient and is actually profitable. And casualties? Counselor Mira asked. 17 injuries requiring medical attention. 0 fatalities. The humans have established safety protocols that work remarkably well in extreme environments. Crix's crystalline surface flickered skeptically. One successful operation doesn't prove they're ready for full council membership. Perhaps not, Vexthar agreed. But I have more to report. He changed the display. New images appeared, 3 more planets, all classified as uninhabitable. Each now had human outposts. These were established without council approval, Vexthar continued, but also without any request for resources. Humanity simply asked for coordinates of worlds we'd abandoned. They're now conducting research, mining operations, and even agriculture on planets we wrote off as impossible. Agriculture? Mira leaned forward. On which world? Epsilon Eridani 4. Class 10, extreme temperature variations, toxic soil composition. The humans are growing food there. Something called potatoes. The chamber erupted in shocked murmurs. Additionally, Vexthar said, raising his voice, humanity has offered to train council species in extreme environment survival. They've shared technology for handling high-gravity operations. And they've requested permission to assist with the failed colony on Tertian 6. Tertian 6 was evacuated 3 cycles ago, Crix protested. The atmospheric storms made it impossible to maintain infrastructure. For us, Vexthar said. The humans reviewed the data and believe they can stabilize the settlement. They're willing to attempt it at no cost to the Council, simply to demonstrate their capabilities. Ambassador Okoye's hologram appeared. Counselors, we're not trying to show off. We're trying to help. There are hundreds of worlds in galactic space that could support life with the right approach. Worlds with resources you need, living space you could use. We can help make those worlds accessible. In exchange for what? Crix demanded. Partnership, Keisha said simply. We're not interested in domination or exploitation. We want to explore, learn, and grow together. Yes, we come from a harsh world. Yes, we're more durable than most species. But that doesn't make us better, just different. We have strengths. You have strengths. Together, we could accomplish incredible things. Vexthar added his own voice. I was skeptical of humanity. Terrified, even. I've spent a year studying them, working with them, watching them operate in environments that should kill them. And I've learned something important. He paused, looking around the chamber at the gathered representatives of 40 species. Humanity's greatest strength isn't their physical resilience. It's their mindset. They see hostile environments and think challenge, not impossibility. They face danger with preparation and respect, not fear. And most importantly, they believe, genuinely believe, that any problem can be solved through cooperation and determination. The Galactic Council has been stagnant, Vexthar continued. We've explored the easy worlds, colonized the safe planets. We've let fear of the unknown stop us from expanding further. Humanity doesn't have that fear. Not because they're reckless, but because they've spent their entire existence overcoming the impossible. He pulled up a final image, Earth, that beautiful blue-green nightmare of a planet. This is where they're from. This is what they consider home. And every single day, they make it work. If they can thrive there, imagine what they could accomplish working with us. Imagine what we could accomplish working with them. The vote for full council membership was unanimous. Ambassador Okoye attended the celebration in person, no longer via hologram. She moved through the council station with ease, though Vexthar noted she stayed in the high-gravity sections to make others more comfortable. "Congratulations, Ambassador," Vexthar said, extending his manipulator arm in the human gesture of greeting they'd taught him. Keisha shook his hand carefully, aware of his species' fragile bone structure. "Thank you, Admiral. For everything. For giving us a chance when you were terrified of us." "I was never terrified," Vexthar lied. She laughed. "Admiral, I read the initial reports. You thought we were going to conquer the galaxy. Can you blame me? Your people are functionally indestructible by our standards. We're really not." Keisha's expression turned serious. "We die, Admiral. We get sick, injured, we fail. Earth isn't forgiving of mistakes. It's made us careful, not invincible. Every human on Rigel 7 knows they could die if they're careless. That's why they're not careless. Your caution looks like recklessness to us. I know. And your safety looks like overcaution to us. But that's okay. We're learning from each other." Vexthar looked out the observation window at the stars beyond. Somewhere out there, humans were working on worlds the Council had abandoned. Not conquering them. Not fleeing from them. Just, living. "What will you do now?" he asked. Keisha smiled. "Keep exploring. Keep learning. We have a saying on Earth, the sky's the limit." She gestured to the stars. "But there's no sky up here, is there? So I guess there are no limits at all." Vexthar felt his scales settle into a pattern his species associated with contentment. Humanity had been terrifying at first. But now, looking at this small woman from a death world, he felt something unexpected. Hope. The galaxy was vast and full of dangers. But for the first time in centuries, the Galactic Council had partners who looked at those dangers and said, "We can handle that." And somehow, impossibly, Vexthar believed them.